Hi, how are ya? Hi there, how are ya? Thanks for coming here tonight. We have a sign-in sheet over there, if you can, some documentation. We also have pizza, all for you. That's all right.
Okay, we're on, we're live.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to CEC 15's February calendar meeting. Today is February 25th, 2025. I am CEC 15 President Antonia Ferraro Martinelli, and I'll be calling this meeting to order at 6:40. And we're coming to you from PS 958, which is a beautiful school. When SCA finally finishes a project, it's really wonderful. So before we call the roll, I'd like to invite the interpreters to introduce themselves in their languages. We'll start with Mandarin, please.
中文翻译，如果需要中文翻译的人员，请拨打347-966-4114，之后请打 ID 号码745-392-977加一个井号键。再重复一次，347-966-4114，之后打 ID 号码745-392-977井号键。Mandarin announcement is completed.
And Spanish?
Spanish.
Yes, please.
Ok. Buenas noches. Si alguien desea interpretación en español, por favor, marque 347-966-4114 y cuando se le pida, por favor, ingrese la clave 131-764-167 más el símbolo numeral. Otra vez el número de marcar es 347-966-4114. El código para entrar es 131-764-167 más el símbolo numeral y por favor mantenga su micrófono apagado. Si no lo oyó, la información está en el chat. Gracias.
And Bangla?
Thank you. The following message will be for Bangla participants. আপনারা যারা আজকের অনুষ্ঠানটি বাংলায় শুনতে চান, আপনাদের ফোন থেকে ডায়াল করবেন 347-966-4114 এবং পিন দিবেন 996-226-541#। আবারও বলছি, ফোন নাম্বারটি হবে 347-966-4114 এবং কনফারেন্স আইডি চাইলে দিবেন 996-226-541#। আপনাদের কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকলে আমাদের মাধ্যমে ফোনের লাইনে করতে পারেন, অনুগ্রহ করে অন্যথায় মিউট করে রাখবেন জুম লাইনে। ধন্যবাদ। থ্যাংক ইউ। বাংলা ইজ কমপ্লিট।
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And now I will turn it over to Leslie to please call the roll.
Good evening. Antonio Ferreira,
Here.
Leslie King, present. Vanessa is absent. Nancy Cruz,
Here.
Katina Rogers. Hans Ariata has an excused absence. Donalda Chumney is online. Nancy Randall, excused absent. Stanley Vidal, excused absence. And Kwame is on his way.
Yeah. So we do not have quorum at present, and we cannot vote to permit anyone to vote remotely or participate officially in a remote capacity, fortunately. So just a reminder to everybody attending virtually, there is a link in the chat to please sign our attendance sheet. And I'll turn it back to Leslie to read the introduction to the meeting. Yes.
Thank you for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and we are glad that you could join us. For those of you who are new to CEC meetings, there are 32 CECs throughout the city, plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community of school districts, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 of whom are elected by parents in the district. The remaining members are appointed by Brooklyn Borough President and 2 high school student members. The CEC 15 is a state mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input in educational decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policies and advocates for high quality education that benefit all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 38 elementary and middle schools, 3 pre-K sites, and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve in an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to the state and city officials. We approve district schooling zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also submit recommendations for the School Construction Authority's annual capital plan. As of recent amendments to the law, CEC advised in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org, and write to us about any issues you may want to address or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison, and all of our names and contact info are available on our website.
All right, great. And Jonathan, our parliamentarian.
Tonight's calendar meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you are attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every comment and/or question will be given time. So the best way to get your question answered is always to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment and/or question. If members do not have a comment, they may cede their time to the chair.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome everybody to our February calendar meeting. I want to thank Principal Shapiro for allowing us to be in her space tonight on such short notice. We have here Rob Aguilar from Councilmember Avile's office with some important resources. If you would mind just coming up here and sharing. You can just sit right there. That's the camera, and it'll pick you up.
Good evening. My name is Rob Aguilar, District Director with the Office of Councilmember Alexa Aviles. So our office has been very busy doing some rapid response to the federal administration's plans for mass deportation. This is a real threat. Is it something that's happening in other communities or that we hear about in the news and it's just not, it's happening somewhere else? It's not. It's happening here. It's happening in our communities and it's very real. So our office came up together to make this document here. It's an informational packet that is available to anyone that needs it. They can come to our office or call us at 718-439-9012. And in this packet, you will find information on how to interact with ICE if you ever encounter ICE or if you're ever detained by ICE. There is also a fillable legal document in here that you can leave specific instructions on what would happen if you are detained by ICE and your child is in school. So this is while it sounds very scary, it's very real. We don't want to put fear in anyone's minds and hearts, but we have to respond. And so this is what our office is doing. I'm going to leave a sample of this with the CEC, but again, if anyone needs this, they can reach out to our office and we're happy to share this with you and we'll email the PDF file to the CEC. And also one last thing that we're working on is it's tax season. And at our office, we're offering free tax prep. So you can call our office again at 718-439-9012 and make an appointment for free tax prep. And we're doing that 3 days a week at no cost to our constituents. And I want to thank the CEC for their hard work and advocacy. They mean a lot to us, to our community. And I want to remind everyone that they are volunteers. They are here on their own time. They're not being paid. And this is what community looks like. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. I don't suppose you're from the elected officials office? Nope, okay, all right. Just checking. All right, so, good evening, everyone. We have a full agenda. I have some updates and some acknowledgements. In the waning days of February, I want to just celebrate Black History Month by recommending Being Black in American Schools by Brian Rashad Fuller. Fuller is a former DOE employee. He helped manage the New York City Community Schools Initiative, and he attended some of our community engagement sessions when we were doing our rezoning a few years ago. In this book, he writes about his personal experiences as a high-achieving African-American student and the need to completely redesign the school experience away from a white supremacist mindset in order to include African-Americans into the schools holistically, whether it is representative curriculum, teacher training, or disciplinary policy. So that is a good book. And I also want to wish Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim families. Ramadan begins the evening of Friday, February 28th, and it continues through March 29th. To honor Ramadan, I want to share a banned book, Lila's Lunchbox, a Ramadan story by Reem Faruqi. The book tells the story of a girl's anxiety about explaining to friends and teachers that she doesn't have her lunchbox because she's fasting. She leaves the lunchroom and she finds solace in the library, where the librarian encourages her to write her thoughts down. So she writes a poem to her teacher, and I'll just quickly read the last couple lines. Ramadan is a time for lots of prayer. We help the poor people to show we care. So in the day, I won't be eating any food, but hopefully we'll stay in a good mood. So this is an adorable little book about Ramadan that is unfortunately banned. Some updates, CEC elections, it's not too late to apply to run. The deadline was extended to February 27th, which is this Thursday. The Borough President's Office has updated the link to apply for a seat as a Borough President appointee for the 2025-27 term. I'm gonna put the link to that in the chat for folks who are attending remotely. CEC 15 still has a vacancy for a parent of an English language learner, and I'll put some information about that in the chat as well. I did attend a parent coordinator candidate interview. Principal Wanda Ramirez at PS1 invited me to sit in on an interview. This candidate would replace our own Michelle Ortiz, who was formerly the parent coordinator at PS1, and she's now our family leadership coordinator in District 15. The candidate seemed enthusiastic and qualified. She is a paraprofessional and a parent at PS1. She's a resident of Sunset Park, and she was a school aide at PS1, so she seemed like a very ideal candidate. There is a PEP meeting tomorrow, February 26th at 6 p.m. at Clara Barton High School. I'll put that information in the chat for people. And finally, in a segment that I guess I'll call U.S. Constitution Watch, the February Department of Education released a Dear Colleague letter last week, which is widely viewed as unconstitutional. However, I want to remind everyone of the first sentence of that letter, which is discrimination is illegal and immoral. Admission screens, be they academic, disciplinary, attendance, or talent, are highly effective proxies for discrimination. So effective, in fact, that when District 15 utilized such screens, it had the second most racially segregated middle schools in the most racially segregated school system in the nation. But after eliminating those screens for our middle schools, District 15 remedied this discrimination in the first year of implementation. I'm going to put a link to an article about that letter in the chat for people. And in more positive news, Chancellor Ramos released 2 letters, one affirming the New York City Public Schools commitment to the rights of LGBTQ students, and another affirming the rights of migrant students. We shared those letters through our mailing list. I want to applaud New York City Public Schools for giving a digital home to some videos about prominent figures in the LGBTQ plus history that PBS has deleted in response to threats by the Trump-Musk administration that infringe on First Amendment rights. These videos are part of the Hidden Voices curriculum if anybody wants to take a look at them, and I'll put an article from Chalkbeat about that in the chat. And that closes my president's report, and I'm going to turn it over to Loretta Moy and Deputy Superintendent Loretta Moy. And Nicole Lancelot. So should we get 2 chairs? Put you here?
I'll start with the superintendent.
However you want to do it. However you want to do it.
Antonia.
Yeah.
It's also the 100th day.
Oh my God, it's the 100th day of school. Well, I assume that that's in your report.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's her
That's
jurisdiction.
an important day.
I'm an old woman.
That's her
Look at
jurisdiction.
me hobble.
Do you want to sit over here to your, or you want to sit over there?
Come on.
Come on in. Come on
I guess
Wherever
I'm
you're
not gonna have a
comfortable.
laptop.
in.
It would be helpful to see the screen.
Oh,
when I'm
here,
looking
here
at it.
you go. Here you go. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for sharing your screen. Appreciate that. So I am Nicole Lanzalato, Deputy Superintendent. I am here on behalf of Superintendent Alvarez, who is taking a well-deserved vacation this week. He's out of the country. So congratulations to him for taking some time, investing in himself and his family. It's important to do that. So I am here to present the superintendent report and the budget presentation with our budget director, Larita. So you can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So some celebrations. We will definitely be sharing how our schools are honoring these holidays and these special activities throughout the month. So stay tuned for that. And thank you, Antonia, for creating, some space and sharing those books with us. Next slide. We're just going to share a few district celebrations. This happened last week. We've had our annual district arts showcase where over 30 schools participated. It happened at Brooklyn High School of the Arts. You can go to the next slide. The auditorium was packed. We had students from all grades perform, dance, every instrument you could possibly imagine, theater, spoken word. It was just so exciting. It felt like Broadway. It felt like a production of Broadway. We were joking, like, if there's any talent scouts out there, get ready to sign our students, because it was the creative genius and just the level of talent was phenomenal. And, we're so excited. Part of our diversity work is to bring students together from across all schools, from across all neighborhoods, from across lines of culture, right, of language, of class. And so it was really beautiful, of neighborhoods. To kind of break those lines. And so this is one of the opportunities and one of the ways that we do that. So thank you for those who were able to come. And we have a few more events happening. You can see the auditorium is packed. We did it differently this year where we had elementary schools present first and families came for that. Then they left and then we had middle schools come. So it wasn't as packed and it felt more manageable. And we received that feedback from families last year. So I think this year it was more successful. So thank you all. This is just a sneak peek into some of the work happening at 896 in honor of Black History Month. They've been having Black musicians come to celebrate some of the art and music and legacy of that work and that heritage. And so students have been meeting with the different artists, and there's a video here that you can watch on your own. So shout out to 896 for bringing African-American culture to life in this way through the arts. Next slide. I had the opportunity, this is one of our newest schools, 456 on State Street. I had the opportunity of visiting Malika's school recently, and parents are actually leading this work. I was so impressed with the level of family engagement and empowerment for Lunar New Year. Families were in the classroom when I visited, facilitating lessons and facilitating Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, art activities and cultural activities. And it was just really impressive to see that level of engagement. This is a brand new school. And then they have this affirmations parade. I mean, many of you are familiar with this building. It's right in downtown Brooklyn, in the middle of it all on Flatbush, and students just completely took over downtown Brooklyn and they were parading. And so it was just really great to see this community come to life in such a short period of time. And the level of community engagement is really such the centerpiece of the work that Malika is doing. And it's really a model. So shout out to her. We wanted to share, we've been sharing every month some of the work happening around curriculum and instruction in our schools, and really wanting to celebrate some of the work around the curriculum, right? We've been talking about wit and wisdom and HMH and illustrative math, and there've been lots of questions and different opinions and concerns and wonderings about what does this really look like in the classroom? And is this changing the life of our school, the instructional core? And we've been really intentional about making sure that that doesn't happen, and that project-based learning continues, and that interdisciplinary learning continues, and that our students are excited about learning, and that teachers are not standing there teaching a script, but that they're teaching to students and making learning exciting. And so this is something that we received from Liz Phillips from PS 321 a week ago. And this is from the email, and she was sharing with us this event that they facilitated, that the fifth grade teachers organized. 200 families came, by the way, and it was the Royal Banquet, and you can go to the next slide. And it was connected to the unit around wordplay, and students were reading the Phantom Toll Booth, and they were studying idioms, and they're studying puns, and they're having a lot of fun reading different texts and learning about jokes and wordplay. And so everyone dressed up, and parents brought in food, and you can see Liz Phillips in the middle. She was the queen, and it was just like this really fun, you can go to the next slide, fun example of how a wit and wisdom unit, you can go to the next slide, that's so grounded in how authors use wordplay to engage audiences, create humor, and express themes, right? You can see the skills, right? Students are learning to analyze character, dialogue, and plot, crafting descriptive short narratives, adapting speech for specific audiences, right? There's a clear final task. There's literary analysis. There's an integration of art, right? You see students are studying paintings, and they're having discussions, and they're thinking about puns and imaginative storytelling. And then at the same time, the school took it to the next level. They went above and beyond and created this event to bring it to life, and to have this celebration. And so this is just a fun example of, you have a curriculum, and what you do with it is what you do with it, right? It could just be this document, and it could just be the script, or you can bring teachers together and give them the autonomy to, be creative and have fun and bring it to life. And so shout out to 321 for making learning like this happen in their community. And I think that's one of the reasons why 321 has such a strong legacy, because this is the work that they do. Next slide. I'd love to watch some of this. We've been sharing these videos monthly. As most of you know, we facilitate monthly principal and AP conferences where we visit schools. So we host 3 principal intervisitations a month and 3 AP intervisitations a month. So 6 times throughout the month, all schools are hosting, right? So if you can imagine, we have 42 schools, and 6 schools a month open up their doors, and teachers open up their classrooms, and there's lots of sharing of practices happening. And we take videos and we share them with the CEC and the community every month, because you can't be with us, unfortunately. I mean, you could, we can arrange that. But you probably have other things to do. So last month, we focused on really looking at MTSS, which is how you support the holistic child, multi-tiered systems of support. And if we could just play this just for 30 seconds, I don't know if the sound's going to work, but I'll give you a sneak peek. Will the sound work? No? Oh, 958. This is one of the schools. Okay, you'll have to watch it on your own. But you'll see students in action. You'll see small group instruction. I don't know if they can hear it. So this is 958. This is the school that we are in right now. And the principal presented on executive functioning and self-regulation. And she talked about how they're using an MTSS model to support students. That's one of her coaches who presented. And then principals went into classrooms to see some of this work in action. Ooh. Oh, excuse me, 30 seconds. Okay. So you'll have to watch that on your own. Okay. She's serious with the time tonight. Okay. But it really is, please do watch it. It's an exciting video, and you get to see the learning come to life in a real and authentic way. So summarizing updates, assuming most of you have this information, I did link a 1-pager, which is also translated in all of the languages on the DOE site. Please apply. I'm going to share with you all of the D15 sites that will be open this summer and all of the affiliated schools. You can apply for as many sites as you'd like. March 4th is when the application opens, and it closes on the 28th, and you'll find out in April what seats you'd be offered. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to anyone from our office, but specifically Michelle Ortiz, our family support leadership coordinator, is available as well. Next slide. Here are our sites. So all of the sites will be open, and then the schools on the right, those are the affiliated schools. So all of those principals in charge and the APs in charge are collaborating to create an academic program and an enrichment program in collaboration with the DYCD partners. So if you have any questions, you can, reach out to these specific school leaders, or you can reach out to, me or someone from the team, and we're happy to support. Upcoming events. Project-based learning workshare is happening. It's happening at MS 51, March 12th. This work, really came from the CEC, from our president, Antonia, and we're excited that we've, continued this tradition to really celebrate the genius of our students and to see project-based learning come to life. And some of the projects are complete, some of the projects are in process. But we will see them all. And it's happening 4 o'clock, Wednesday, the 12th. So please be there. You can RSVP using that QR code. And we're excited to celebrate the work of our students.
When should we be there with CEC members if we want to help set up?
I'll let you know. Yeah, because there are different time slots when people are coming. There's not a lot of time because school's in session, but it's like a 2-hour window before.
Okay.
But I'll have Neil and Valerie reach out.
Okay.
We are having this, Counted Out is a film that was released last year, and it's all about math. And it's really about how everything in our lives, right, is impacted by math, and how our students can help shape the outcomes of politics, of the environment. And our math team at the district level organized the screening, and they will be hosting a panel. And it's March 14th. And it's connected to the work that's happening in our schools. But it's also taking it outside of our schools and looking at kind of the global context, the national context. It's looking at politics, it's looking at the environment, the climate, and some of the real world implications of math, and how our young people can be agents of change with math as the lens. So it's really interesting. You should check out the trailer, and you should join us, Brooklyn High School of the Arts, 5:30, Friday, March 14th. Hope to see you there. What's that? Pie Day. Especially like, it's my birthday. I'm like, well, there you go. Have dinner in the neighborhood park club. The Lion King. This is Broadway. You don't need to go into the city. This is it, folks. Broadway, Lion King Jr., April 4th and 5th. It's going to be fabulous. Prospect Heights High School. It is free. Bring everyone you know. We're so super excited. This is our 3rd annual production, and students, again, to the diversity piece, and bringing students together from all schools, from grades 3 to 12th. They're performing together, they're rehearsing together, they're building relationships together. And it's exciting to see them on stage and to cultivate their talents and their relationships. So I hope you can join us for that. Math workshop is happening April 8th. Join us. It's during the day, 10 a.m. Next slide. Q&A.
So let's move to questions for the Deputy Superintendent. Is there anybody joining us on Zoom who has any comments and or questions? Oh, job, Nicole. Feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat as well. We wait to see if there are any questions in the chat. Are there any comments or question on the Spanish line?
有没有人在中文线上？
Any comments or questions on the Bongo line?
No comments or question in Bangla line yet.
No comments or questions in the Spanish line.
Thank
No
you.
question,
And
no comments on Chinese line.
okay, thank you so much. Yes.
Question for you, Nicole. You mentioned the superintendent is taking some R&R. Are you aware of any intention that they have for making a statement in support of the LGBT and especially trans community here in D15? The chancellor's comment was, I think, widely understood by the community in D15 as fairly passable.
The chancellor sent out the letter yesterday, and that's the guidance that we're using to, to lead the work in the district. We've been leveraging the chancellor's regulations. We've been leveraging the guidelines that have been set forth regarding, supporting transgender students and keeping our kids safe and following the policies from the LGBTQ office. At the DOE, that hasn't changed. And that's the message that we've been providing to our principals and supporting them with those resources and those tools all along. That's the information that I can provide at this time.
Well, there's one gap that I see very obviously, which is the school system states that children should not be intimidated or threatened. But questioning a transgender student's existence by an elected official is both threatening and intimidating. And there was no comment whatsoever in the chancellor's letter about specifically denouncing elements of the executive branch's orders, opposed to just saying everything remains the same here in New York. These are two very different messages. So to stand up for our own guidance around preventing intimidation and threats, we are missing the mark. At least in D15, the voice should be heard, even if it's not going to be loud enough from the chancellor.
I think the work happening in our schools speaks to your question and to the concerns that you're raising in terms of how our schools are creating safe and welcoming environments that affirm and support our students and provide that safe space. I can't speak directly to the chancellor's letter, but I can speak to the work that's happening in terms of what our principals are doing, what our teachers are doing, what our GSAs are doing, what our advisory programs are doing. That's the work that I can speak to and that I know is happening. And I know that our superintendent is committed to ensuring every single kid is respected, is valued, is seen, feels safe every single day. And I know the chancellor's committed to that. She said that in the letter as well.
So it sounds like there is no plans to make any additional statements.
What the chancellor said in the letter is the statement.
So additionally, no.
To my knowledge, no.
So you're doing all you can. Got it.
If you'd like us to present on it, what we're doing, we'd be more than happy to do that.
I'm not hearing a lot of reciprocity for what my point is, which is intimidation and threats are being made. The superintendent and the chancellor are not saying anything against those threats or that intimidation, just we will continue to respect all. These are different things to community members who feel fear based on those threats and that intimidation.
I can't speak to a statement. I can speak to the work that is happening. To me, that's a lot more powerful.
The actions are very much appreciated, but words travel far and fast and stand for things. So I hear what you're saying and I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the community? Let's move to CEC questions or comments. Nancy?
No, thank you for that presentation.
Sonia?
No questions.
Leslie?
No.
Katina?
I do want to echo what the community member was saying. I have a ton of respect for the work of the D15 offices. And I think that this is a moment where anything we can do to be supporting folks who are vulnerable in this moment is really important. One thing that we were hoping to do as a CEC today was to approve a letter that we would send to the chancellor, reiterating some of our goals for the district, for the communities, for the children who are in our schools. We won't be able to do that tonight because we don't have quorum. That's frustrating on our side, not to be able to take the actions that we would like to be able to take. I really appreciate hearing from Councilmember Aviles' office, all of the work that you all are doing to support particularly the immigrant communities in our neighborhoods. It's a really scary time for people right now, and I am curious, what support principals are receiving to be able to continue to stand strong in the types of communities that they're wanting to build and support. It's all of this messaging that's been coming down from the federal level has been so alarming. And I know that my world in a professional setting is higher education. There have been so many universities who are complying in advance, even though so many of these orders are unconstitutional. And I don't know what principals are feeling right now. I can't, presume to speak for any of them, but yeah, just want to reiterate the sense of urgency and concern, both for families and for school leaders.
Thank you. I want to echo everything Katina just said, and Nicole, just echoing off of our community member. Would it be possible to have a conversation with Raphael when he comes back about the possibility of sending a letter in addition to the amazing work that we know that you are doing with the schools?
I can certainly discuss that with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, at the next CEC meeting, sharing some of the work and possibly having some of our principals come to present on what's happening, and we can talk about some of the supports, the resources, the tools, and the communication that our schools have received over the last few months, over the last couple of weeks specifically. I think that would be helpful to really understand the full picture.
Yeah, it'd be very helpful, especially if we're able to pass our resolution as well.
Yeah. I just want to echo these, that other council members, but also say it is very powerful to highlight the work that's already been being done, but also, like you were saying, reaffirm the statement or the commitment to, in a very pointed way, to reaffirm that maybe in a more direct way, that where the District 15 stands, I think, is what you guys were saying as well, and what you were saying. I think that's saying and doing, and then showing is all very important.
Yeah, because families are talking about leaving, their kids don't feel safe, parents don't feel safe, they need to know who's in their corner.
Anybody else? Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yeah, I think we're moving on to the exciting part, yeah. There's the funding.
Do it. Need to read.
You want to come up here or?
Yeah. Let's get them away. Thanks. Hey. No, here it goes. There we go. Okay, hello again. I'm joined here by our budget director, Larita Moy. Can everyone hear me? Am I muted?
Well, this has to be muted.
Muted, okay.
I'm sorry,
Perfect.
that's
Okay,
the microphone.
Okay, so welcome to our annual school budget engagement session. I'm Nicole Anzalato, Deputy Superintendent, here on behalf of Rafael Alvarez, our District Superintendent. I introduce Larita Moy, our Budget Director, who is here with me as well to support and answer any questions you may have. Every spring, the Panel for Educational Policy, the PEP, votes on the New York City schools budget allocation formula for the following school year, which is known as the Fair Student Formula, FSF. In preparation for this event, superintendents and borough-based support staff present the New York City Public Schools proposed FSF budget allocations for fiscal year 2025 to all community and citywide education councils. The purpose of today's presentation is to review the budget and allocation formula, review fair student funding, and the weights for fiscal year 2026, which aligns with the 25-26 school year. This presentation reflects our continued approach in how New York City Public Schools is conducting community engagement around our schools' budgets as it relates to the fair student funding formula. Our goal is to increase transparency in ensuring that you, as critical community stakeholders, are made aware of how schools are funded and made aware of the resources available to you to better understand your school's budgets. I appreciate you joining our meeting today, and we'll dive into this presentation. Now on to the agenda. Today, I'm going to be discussing three main topics: an overview of this year's overall New York City Public Schools budget and the specific budget for our district, a detailed explanation of the Fair Student Funding formula, and a walkthrough of the new web pages created to increase budget transparency. If you have any questions during the presentation, please direct them to the chat or in person. Please hold them to the end and we will have time to answer your questions. We will have, if we can't answer your questions, we will have team members ready to respond to your questions and we'll follow up accordingly. Questions that were not able to be answered during the presentation will be collected and shared with our team, who will then respond, and we will get back to the group. Additionally, the intention of the session is to collect public comments on the formula for the upcoming school year. We ask that if you have specific feedback on the weights for the Fair Student Funding formula, that you please feel free to share that feedback. And Deirdre, our executive director, is putting this link in the chat. Please share that feedback with budget public comments at schools.nyc.gov. That's budget public comments at schools.nyc.gov. Our New York City Public Schools team will take public comments received at this email address into consideration in the coming week. Slide 3, New York City's public schools budget. I'm going to provide an overview of our overall budget, where the funding comes from, how our budget is spent, a review of our district's budget, and directions for where you can find specific budget information. Slide 4, please. Where does our funding come from? I'm now going to provide an overview of our overall budget and where the funding comes from. This data is based on the most recent budget included in the mayor's January plan. Our total budget for the 24-25 school year is $40.8 billion, or about $32,284 per student in our system. New York City provides most of our funding. For the 24-25 school year, the city has contributed $23 billion, or 58% of our total budget. Most of our city funding comes from what we call city tax levy dollars. City tax levy funds are drawn from local taxes, including property taxes, sales tax, and personal income taxes. Every year, the mayor proposes the amount of city tax levy funding we get, and the city council must pass the budget into law before the new fiscal year begins on July 1st. $15 billion, or 36%, comes from New York State funding. New York State is our second largest source of funding. Every year, the governor proposes the amount of state funding that we will get, mainly based on the number and types of students enrolled in our schools. And then the state legislature must pass the budget into law before the new fiscal year begins on May 1st. Funding generally comes from income and corporate taxes, as well as property and sales tax. Federal funding comprises a total of $2 billion, or 6% of funding for this school year. The federal government is our third largest source of funding. Every year, Congress proposes a budget and the president must sign the budget into law in advance of the new fiscal year, which begins on October 1st. The Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, provides the rules for allocating most of the federal funding we receive. Next slide, please. How is New York City Public Schools budget spent? In the previous slide, we covered an overview of where New York City Public Schools receive its funding from, and now we will shift into how that funding is spent in our schools and across our system. Within our budget, we have mandated costs that must be covered annually, including employee benefits, pension, and debts, as well as state mandated payments to charter schools, non-public, and contract schools. This pie chart represents the major costs. I will provide a brief explanation of each section. Let's begin with early childhood, located towards the bottom right-hand side of the pie chart, and we will move clockwise. The first two items cover employee benefits, pension, and debt. This $11.4 billion pays for healthcare and other employee benefits, pension payments for staff, debt payments on loans for school construction and upgrades. Charters, we allocate 8% or $3.3 billion for charter schools as mandated by state law. Non-public and contract schools. Non-public and contract school payments cover schools and programs that educate New York City students, but are not directly run by the New York City DOE. The $2.5 billion includes students with disabilities attending specialized schools, supplemental services to students attending non-public schools. Superintendent field offices and central offices combined comprise less than 2% of our overall budget. The school operations section pays for non-instructional services that students receive. The $5.1 billion is used to pay for costs, including free breakfast and lunch available to all students, bus routes, loan payments on buildings, new construction and renovation. This is similar to mortgage payments. We allocate $2.1 billion to support early childhood, birth to 5 across the city. Lastly, the largest proportion of our budget is allocated towards K-12 schools and instruction. We allocate $15.7 billion or 38% of our overall budget annually to support our schools, including general education teachers, guidance counselors, deans, health and school climate initiatives, such as gym teachers, Respect for All Week, and climate action days, special education, after-school activities, summer school, and other operating expenses. This also includes funding for textbooks, computers, materials, and supplies. Now transitioning from a citywide view, let's look at the budget and funding source breakdown for our district. District 15, 2024-2025 school budget. As you can see in District 15, we have a $563 million budget across 51 elementary and middle schools, serving 24,993 students. This does not include District 75, since those programs are not funded through FSF. School budgets are comprised of a mix of fair student funding and other funding sources. In the chat, Executive Director Keys will place the link. You can go to schools.nyc.gov. You can choose a school, select the reports tab, open budget and finances, review reports, including FSF overview and detail, Galaxy allocation budget summary, and the expenditure report. We will also be sharing this information with the CEC, and it can be shared more widely for the community to review. Where can I find information about my school's budget? We have reviewed our overall New York City's schools budget and our district budget. During this presentation, I will not be reviewing individual schools' budgets. Those are available on our public website. This slide shows you the steps to find school budgets from our homepage. I will give you a minute to use this information to load your school-specific budget if you are interested. So if you have a computer in front of you, you could access the site, schools.nyc.gov, with the information provided on this slide deck. Note, pre-K centers and charter schools do not have budget reports on the DOE site. This slide deck and this information is all on the DOE site, so you can access it. But like I said, the CEC can provide this information. This is public information, and we can follow up with the community at the end of the meeting so that you can receive it directly. Who decides how money is spent at the school level? Once this funding is in place within school budgets, principals are responsible for the funds allocated to schools and have a great deal of flexibility in how they spend the funding. These choices are made in partnership with school leadership teams, or SLTs. As principals and SLTs create the school's comprehensive education plan, their CEP, they identify school-specific instructional needs and priorities and align the school budget to this plan. Principals work with their SLTs to create the school's budget in alignment to the goals and instructional priorities outlined in the CEP. Superintendents like myself supervise all principals in our district through this process and must approve all school budgets and their alignment with the school's CEP. We will now go into more depth around what fair student funding is, how it works, and the proposed formula for the 25-26 school year. What is fair student funding? Fair student funding, you can go to slide 10, please. Fair student funding, or FSF, is the largest funding stream that we provide to schools. In fact, it accounts for nearly 2/3 of most K-12 New York City public school budgets. The allocation of fair student funding provided to schools is based on the number of students enrolled at each school and the specific needs of those students. We make these calculations based on our fair student funding formula, which calculates how we distribute this overall pot of money to schools. Within this formula, students with needs that require more support receive more funding in alignment with those needs. In many cases, schools also receive funding from other funding streams, including federal funding streams like Title I, Title III, IDA, which is funding focused on special education, or other targeted allocations for specific initiatives. These pots make up the remaining funding within the overall school budget. As a note, charter schools, 3K, pre-K, and D75 programs are funded outside of the FSF formula. Additionally, mandated IEP-related services, including speech teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, as well as one-to-one paraprofessionals, are also funded outside of the FSF formula. Again, the money provided to schools from the fair student funding allocation provides principals with significant flexibility, working in partnership with their SLTs to utilize the funding to design instructional programs tailored to the needs of their students within their school community. Funding from the FSF allocation provides for each school's basic instructional program and classroom services. This funding can be used to pay for classroom teachers, including arts, gym, and cluster teachers at the elementary school level, as well as school leadership, guidance counselors, social workers, and administrative and pupil support staff. Additionally, the FSF allocation can pay for after-school programs, tutoring and intervention programs, as well as absent teacher coverages and classroom resources and materials. Now on to the next slide. Fair student funding, how does it work? I want to now use this as an opportunity to further clarify some of what we've already discussed. Throughout this presentation, we've been talking about fair student funding and the fair student funding formula. When we say fair student funding, we are talking about the money that is allocated to K-12 schools from this large pot, not including pre-K or District 75 programs. This year's fair student funding is approximately $7.4 billion. The fair student funding formula is the method by which we decide how to allocate that funding to schools. This slide outlines the formula and how we utilize the formula to calculate the total number of fair student funding that each school receives. Now I'm going to walk you through how we utilize the formula to determine how much fair student funding each school receives and how we determine the specific dollar amount. Each school receives a foundational amount which is provided to every school, regardless of the number of students that the school serves. This covers per school overhead costs, such as the principal and school secretary, but can be used for any purpose. We then fully fund the cost of the collectively bargained salary increases for staff and other personnel costs. We then add funding to the formula for collectively bargained contractual pay increases for school staff. Given the new set of collective bargaining agreements, we are looking at ways to update the formula for CB. Then we calculate the remainder of the FSF funding by allocating a base amount for each student per capita, and then allocating additional funding based on each student's identified educational needs and instructional programs. It is in this part of the formula that we take into account the weights that we have been referring to throughout the presentation. On the next slide, we will dive more deeply into the weights that we utilize to determine the specific dollar amount that we allocate per student so that you can have a clear understanding of what goes into this part of the formula. I also want to pause to reiterate that within this formula, we take the time to examine the individual needs of each student to determine funding allocations. We make these individualized calculations for each student, aligned to their individual and specific needs and educational program, to determine how much funding would be provided to that school for each student. On slide 12, the slide we're currently looking at, we're going to review the proposed 25-26 fair student funding weights. This chart shows the proposed weights for next school year. That means if approved by the panel for education policy, the PEP, in April, these weights will be used to calculate the school's FSF allocation for the 25-26 school year. This slide displays the FSF weights for the current school year 24-25, which are proposed to be maintained for the 25-26 school year. Here you can see the different types of weights that students can be eligible to receive based on their instructional needs or academic programs. Now to more deeply understand the weights that we use to calculate the last part of the formula from the previous slide, the number of students per FSF category and their FSF weighted needs. Each student's weighted need is determined by the FSF formula. Now I will explain the different weights on this slide. For 2024-25, the base weight, we're not there yet. We're still on slide 12. For 24, thank you though. For 24-25, the base weight of 1.0 was equal to approximately $4,254 per capita. This per capita is adjusted annually to reflect changes to the citywide average teacher salary. The basic grade weight is allocated to schools for all students on their audited October 31st register and is calculated by considering instructional programming requirements by student grade level with distinct weights for K-5, 6-8, and 9-12. Funding for academic intervention, AIS, is determined by student academic performance when a student enters a school using test scores from their prior year. For schools where students do not have incoming test scores in the lower grades, such as before students begin taking tests or if they do not have a prior test score, we provide funding based on a student's poverty level. Funding for special education is determined by the percentage of time students spend receiving special education services. For example, we have one weight for students receiving services for less than 20% of their week. Funding low intensity of services, another weight funding students receiving part-time services for up to 59% of their week. Moderate intensity of services, and a final weight for students receiving more than 60% receiving special ed services distinguished by the majority service time, less inclusive, special class, or more inclusive, integrated co-teaching. These special education weights are then also broken out by student grade level with a specific weighted value, again determined based on the cost of providing the instructional program. We also provide supplemental funding that supports students who have been declassified as special education students. This funding supports students in their first year transitioning out of special ed services through the post-IEP transitional support weight. Funding for our Ls is allocated based on student grade level, reflecting mandated instructional services, including bilingual and ENL instructional programming. Additionally, we have weights for former Ls who have achieved proficiency within the past 2 years indicated using the state designated term commanding. We also provide funding for Ls with students with interrupted formal education, CEC status. Students with this classification receive their respective L weight in addition to the CEC weight. We also have another category of weights for portfolio high schools. These weights are provided to schools based on the number of students who are involved in these academic programs within each high school. Career and technical weights have different tiers based on the type of career preparation programs. Programs that require more resources, such as nursing, agriculture, aviation, technology, automotive, culinary, require industry-specific equipment, higher level of consumable supplies and materials, student internship requirements that are integral to the program of study, and highly specialized and ongoing industry training for teachers have higher weights to support that instructional programming. There are also separate weights for students in specialized academic or specialized audition schools and for students attending transfer schools. The transfer school weight is broken out into 2 tiers based on students' age and credit accumulation. Transfer school students who are further behind in credits at the time of admission receive a higher weight. Only students attending high schools are eligible for these portfolio weights. Funding for students in temporary housing provides additional support to schools enrolling in students in temporary housing. This has an impact on our asylum-seeking families who are living in temporary housing, providing additional resources to the schools enrolling STH population. Funding for the concentration of needs weight provides additional funding to schools with high populations of students with significant needs. Research shows that schools that serve higher concentrations of students with high needs require additional resources to provide robust education and appropriate resources and supports to their students. The concentration weight includes factors for proportion of students who are in poverty, students with disability, students who are in temporary housing, students residing in foster care, English language learners, and students with low performance as key indicators of concentrations of need. The 25-26 proposed FS weights are unchanged from the current school year. On to the next slide, how the FSF weights work if the per capita were $1. We just took a look at all of the weights that students could be eligible to receive within the Fair Student Funding Formula allocation. I also shared that we are calculating that formula for each school. As we are calculating that formula for each school, we take into account the instructional needs of each individual student within the school as we determine the school's overall budget allocations. In this slide, we will look at how each student's calculation is determined. The different types of weights are indicated by color on the right side of the slide. In order to determine the weight for each student, we evaluate their eligibility for the weight based on data in New York City Public Schools systems that store key information about students. We're going to walk you through the process for how Fair Student Funding would be allocated for 2 students, Ava and Miles, through the Fair Student Funding formula. Ava and Miles are 2 students who attend a school in our district. Ava is a 2nd grader and Miles is a 6th grader. The orange section shows the grade weight that they first received. Because Ava is a 2nd grade student, he is entitled to the K-5 grade weight of 1.0. again shown on the left graph in orange. Since Miles is a sixth grader, he is entitled to the grade weight of 1.08. If they were a high school student, they would receive a weight of 1.03. The navy blue section shows the special education weight. Both students are students with disabilities requiring special education, classroom instructional services, SETS, special class, or integrated co-teaching ICT. AVA's Individualized Educational Program, IEP, states 60% of AVA's instructional program is to be spent in an ICT setting. Therefore, AVA is entitled to the full-time, more inclusive special education weight of 1.74, shown in navy blue on the left. Miles's IEP requires less than 20% of Miles's instructional program to be in an IEP setting. Therefore, he is entitled to low intensity special education weight of 0.56, shown in blue on the right. Both Ava and Miles are classified as English language learners, Ls, shown in yellow. Ava is an elementary school former L who tested out of L status within the last 2 years. Because New York State requires 2 years of English as a new language service for former Ls, she is entitled to the K-5 L weight of 0.13. Miles is also an L. Miles is enrolled at a bilingual program as middle school. The school has appropriately coded Miles as enrolled in a bilingual program scheduling system within STARS. As such, he is entitled to the 6 to 8 bilingual weight of 0.55. Both Ava and Miles are entitled to the Academic Intervention Services, AIS weight, shown in red. Ava is a student in poverty, and therefore they are entitled to the FSF Academic Intervention weight of 0.12, shown in red on the left. Miles is a student who entered the school in 6th grade with 5th grade test scores that were below proficiency. As a result, he is entitled to the AIS weight of 0.35, shown in red on the right. Both Ava and Miles are students in temporary housing, shown in green. As such, they both receive the STH weight of 0.12. Ava attends a school with high concentration of student needs, shown in pink. Ava attends a tier 3 school, the highest concentration of need, and is entitled to a weight of 0.12. Miles attends a school with lower concentration of need, which does not receive the weight. The concentration of needs is shown in pink, in the pink bar at the top. When you add all the pieces together, Ava's allocation through the FSF formula would total a weight of 3.23, while Miles's allocation would total 2.66. On to the next slide, how do these weights work? Using the example of the 2 students, Miles and Ava, we're now going to look at a more realistic example where the weight of 1.0 is equal to $4,254. We can go on to the next slide.
No,
What the?
it's this one. You can-
What does it say about there? Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Using the example of the same 2 students, Miles and Ava, with the same student needs from the previous slide, we now look at a more realistic example where the weight of 1.00 is equal to 4,254. Ava's weight of 3.23 is equal to 13,742, while Miles's weight of 2.66 is equal to approximately 11,317 under the FSF formula. More information is available online about fair student funding and school budgets. On to the next slide. Our executive director is dropping this information into the chat, and we will be sending it out as well, and it's available on the DOE website. On the info hub, under reports, you will find financial data and reports. There's detailed information about each and every school's budget allocation. You can see that under school allocation memoranda or SAMs, a summary of each school's total and fair student funding budget along with student and staff counts, a programmatic guide to fair student funding, as well as how the fair student funding allocation is calculated for each school. You can find the following online on each individual school webpage under reports, then budget and finances, and the directions are on slide 3. Detailed information on the school's budget based on the different types of funding schools receive and detailed information as to how the principal has budgeted for the current year, including the number of staff positions and other planned spending. And I just want to remind everyone that last year, a request came and we offered an additional support where our budget director, Larita, provided a workshop to families, which was very well attended, where families and other folks from the community joined to learn about how to access these tools and how to navigate based on, a lot of SLT members came because the idea is that SLT members are partnering with principals to make these decisions, right, in alignment to their CEP goals. So I know in conversations with Ms. Moy, she's happy to do that again. And we can also have members from our team and principals who are, budget experts and who are excited about. I know that as a principal, I loved managing the budget. That was something that I actually enjoyed, which was a weird thing, but I enjoyed it. So we're happy to do that if, I know this is a presentation where I'm reading a script, right? So, but if we want to have some learning around it and have a working session, we're happy to do that. So we can talk more about that. Okay, improving budget transparency, new fair student funding school web pages. And we did share this last year. There may have been some new improvements. There is a new look and feel to the FSF school web pages, a more streamlined look and feel. Dollars up top with register and associated dollars down below. Beginning of the year, mid-year change, and final amounts for the school year, all on one page. On to the next slide, improving budget transparency, school budget at a glance. And this is one of the pages and one of the tools that, we could facilitate a workshop on if people are interested. In addition to the current webpage detailing each school's Galaxy allocation and budget summary, a new school budget at a glance brings together data on student enrollment, demographics, budget allocations, and use of funds. The new look also compares school demographic information to citywide averages. Under K-12 funding for the school, you can see the school budget allocations rolled up into major funding categories. You can also see how each of these is a share of the school's budget. For this school, FSF makes up 74% of their budget. Under K-12 spending for this school, you can see the budget summary rolled up into spending categories. Classroom teachers, other salaries, employee benefits, and non-salaries known as OTPS. Generally supplies, materials, books. Remember how much I used to love my budget?
Yes, I did.
Slide 8, future changes and feedback. Slide 18. All public comments will be reviewed by New York City Public Schools teams. Public questions and comments related to the FSF formula will be posted on the Panel for Educational Policy PEP website. Analysis and response of each relevant question and comment will be available for review on the FSF website in advance of the April 23rd vote. Comments and questions may be directed to the following email address or the number by April 22nd, 2025. Send public comments to budgetpubliccomments@schools.nyc.gov or by phone to 212-374-6754. The information is on the slide. And our executive director has put that information in the chat. I thank you tremendously for your time and attention. Thank you for sharing your questions. And we'll be gathering any unanswered questions and sharing responses if we don't have the information with us in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Is this mine?
questions or
Yes.
comments from people joining us on Zoom?
No questions from the language line in Spanish.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No question from Mandarin line.
Thank
No
you.
question in Bangla line as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from people on Zoom before I transition to in person? Any questions or comments?
The only comment I have is as an SLT member, that's number one question I get from engaged parents is, where do I get my hands on the budget? And this is the best answer I've seen.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay. CEC members, questions, comment?
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's on topic, but anyone here might be able to help me. Because there's conversations going around about, our present government and them threatening to get rid of the DOE. I'm totally ignorant to what that's about and how real that is. Personally, I don't follow the news, it's just getting depressing. I get my news from the people outside, they talk to me. But how real is that? Cause you seem like an expert, Ms. Moy.
That was to you,
Ms. Moy,
Lord.
And also, how would that affect the budget if that happened?
Okay, great. Thank you. Excellent comment, or question. Can you go to slide 4 for me, please?
I don't believe I have.
No.
Oh, okay.
On the screen, can someone go to, okay, great.
You can have my copy. I can find it.
So that's a great question. And as you said, this is a question that's being posed a lot, especially within the DOE as well. And as you can see, when we take a look at our overall budget, you can see that the federal government's portion is approximately $2 billion, which is 6% of our budget. So it's not a huge hit if the funding is taken away. What I have been advised to state is that if the funding is taken away from us, that the city and the state would then have to come together to fill in the gap.
How would that work structurally in terms of the DOE and how the school system works in comparison to just the public school sector to the charter sector or private sector? Like, would we as states independently run our school systems? Or would it just be the same, but just the money's taken away and we have to compensate that with money from the city and the state?
Okay, so what I think you're asking is about the Department of Education?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. All I know is that I believe that the Department of Education would remain the same and that the funding would probably be pulled out. And if the funding is pulled out, then like I said, the city and the state would have to then come in and fill in the gap. As far as the charter schools are concerned and other schools, I'm not exactly sure how that structure would happen because I don't think that anyone, they're probably thinking about it now, but they haven't provided that information to me as of yet.
May I?
Yes.
I may be incorrect here, but isn't the federal funding primarily Title I, special education?
It is.
Like it's the funding that serves those in need, who need. So that is where the hit is really gonna come. Just so, I mean, the states run the schools.
Right.
The federal government doesn't run the schools. In fact, I think the DOE was created, Jimmy Carter, right? Is that right? DOE was created by Jimmy Carter in 79, so it's new, it's not that old, actually. The states run the schools. So that's like, it's basically the federal government is gonna get rid of like, what DEI, anything that deals with helping others and those who learn differently, those who, that's the money.
Yeah.
So.
And the idea was that people, since it was created, have been looking to dismantle it. And so it's not that they're necessarily trying to strip all funding sources, which
right.
some people are,
Mhm.
but the plan that's been put forth by people even before this new administration was to get rid of some of the bureaucracy in the US Department of Education and move it to other parts of the government. So moving funding streams to the Treasury Department, and having them being in charge of paying for aid and whatnot.
Right,
So
but we're still talking about that percentage that is, well, I mean, the Title I, Title III.
Right.
I forget what were the other.
But getting rid of the Department of Education doesn't necessarily mean getting rid of that funding.
That's
It
correct.
could, but it doesn't necessarily mean.
And
So I think this current
Right, but if
administration exactly means that. in
Right,
my
but
opinion.
I'm sorry, say that.
I think the federal government exactly needs to get rid of it.
Right, and if they do, remember that the city and the state realizes that money, they know who that money is targeted towards. And like I said, when they come to fill a gap, they will also give us instructions, just like the federal government gives us instructions on how the funds are to be utilized. I'm sure that they would do the same, so that those students who have special needs they will still be able to receive the services.
Yeah. And Title I, Title III, I mean, these are.
All of the special ed, the
Right,
Ls,
the
yes,
IDEA,
exactly.
like these all went through Congress,
That
it's
is-
not just executive orders, and so, to stop all the funding, we do have a government currently, at least that has multiple branches and checks and balances, and, so hopefully, these funding, at least the funding pieces will remain intact unless every single branch agrees that we need to dismantle it.
It may go away,
If it, yeah.
but it may go away like that, and then you'll have to go through the other branches to be reallocated. That's what's happening right now. The money will just stopping.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to be W
That's
down.
It's a good question.
Thank you for some answers. I appreciate it.
Are we going down?
Yeah, I had a question. So I noticed that the weights for the fair student funding were proposed to remain the same.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if there has been any evaluation or assessment of how accurate the weights have been in reflecting the needs of students within the schools, because I mean, they're very specific, each of the weights, and they make sense to me, but I'm wondering if there is a group of people within the DOE that is evaluating whether the weights truly make sense, in terms of the number allocations.
I don't know if there's a group of people that can find out. I can take that question back and bring it back to you. But what I can say is with regards to the weights, say for instance, for the L weights, and especially for the special education weights, we certainly hear from the schools and from parents as well as teachers when the funds are not allocated on time, or if they feel that the funds are insufficient. And then we have principals along with parents that fight for additional funding. So I believe that they are helping. I'm not sure if more money should be attached to a weight, if that's your question. If they need to attach more money to certain weights and decrease, I'm not exactly sure.
Great, thank you.
We could also look back at the Fair Student Funding Working Group. That came together for a few years in collaboration with the chancellor, I think starting in 2022. To see if there was an analysis or study around that.
I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that specifically, but I'm sure there was some conversation around that.
Yeah.
Maybe not most recently.
Yes.
So that would be interesting to look back at that.
And
They publicized a big report. So I'm wondering.
they did.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the parents here at District 15 was a part of that working group, Johanna. Yeah. Johanna was a part of that working group.
Yeah.
So she would be able to provide you with that, the document that they published.
Right, and they worked, they worked hard to get some of these changes inactive.
God bless you.
Thank you for this. It's really helpful, and it's a good reminder about the clearer budget at a glance pages. It's really useful to see. I know there's been some back and forth about the state, what is it, the state foundation aid formula? Is that what it's called? Where does that stand at this point? Is that changing? Is it to New York City's benefit? It's not to New York City's benefit?
I haven't heard anything. I can ask that question as well.
I haven't tracked it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Advocates for Children and the Coalition for Equitable Schools has put out, an action that I think I announced it at the last meeting, because New York City is gonna be disadvantaged because of the new changes to the formula that Hochul has adopted.
Okay, so that's still where it's at.
Yeah, we're getting less money than we would have without those changes.
And it was already disadvantaged in New York City. I thought there was a push at one point to try and make that more equitable, but anyway.
Well, we've done all the foundation aid, changes to the foundation aid formula.
When you say make it more equitable, what do you mean by that?
For New York City.
Okay.
The recognition that cost of living here is higher, that student needs are often higher. And yet I'm new to all of this piece of it, and it sounded like the foundation aid formula hadn't been reevaluated in a long time, and there was an acknowledgement at one point, I thought, that New York City schools needed to be receiving more money from the
And it
state.
happened, yes,
It happened.
because
And
what
it
you're,
did happen.
what you're referring to is that, at one point with the foundation aid, they were
Yeah.
not getting as much money
Right.
as some of the other schools, right? And so what happened was some schools were being funded, at less than 100%. You had schools that were being funded at 87% or 97% or whatever. So what they have done is all schools now are funded at 100%.
Got it, okay, and then so what's happening now with Hochul's proposal?
Well, they
not doing that?
revised the foundation aid formula and, they're not looking at the cost of living of New York City, and so we are getting, I don't remember the exact number, but we're getting less than we would have if they weren't making these changes to the formula.
Okay.
So, I don't.
Thank you.
I mean, we can look into it.
Yeah.
See what information we can gather.
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah, so could we put back up the slide with all of the different weights listed? With all the tiny little numbers. Near the end.
Slide number 12.
There, he has it. Okay, so, I just want to point out for everybody that students in temporary housing, the weight, which this council advocated strongly for, in the last term, the weight is 0.12, and we now have approximately 140,000 students in temporary housing. And I would advocate for increasing that weight. I also want to point out the portfolio high school weights are higher than what we're allocating as weights for the temporary students in temporary housing. And their needs seem to be greater than some of our portfolio high schools. And my question, what determines what a portfolio high school is? Because all of our high schools are very specialized. So what is the difference between, well, who fits into that bucket? Who falls into the bucket of the portfolio specialized audition and the specialized academic?
Well, I think the description, in terms of industry-based, the materials that are provided, CTE programs, culinary, automotive programs that are gonna be very cost heavy.
Right, but
That's
like literally what schools
the audition.
are they talking about? Because is Brooklyn High School of the Arts in the portfolio school
We
bucket?
would have to look into that. I don't know if it's considered. Yeah, I'm not sure. But we can. look into
And
it.
like, you know, GHS is an IB
No, this is
program.
all, yeah, this is
Okay,
across the
so
city.
wouldn't like a school like Maker Academy be one?
Or
or a
LaGuardia,
school like
yeah.
LaGuardia?
Mhm.
I think Leaders High School had certainly a lot of.
But you want to
budget,
see the
not-
criteria as to how,
Right, I
Schools
want
are
to,
determined
like,
with
how,
criteria.
it seems like
Yeah.
every single one of our high schools is specialized. We don't have big comprehensive high schools, which I think is an absolute travesty that we don't have big comprehensive high schools anymore. They're all literally specialized.
So I'm just curious about that because what I've noticed is that the schools that are offering the CTE programs,
Mhm.
they often have, well, at least from what I have observed of my direct observation is those schools tend to have higher need students who need more supports to get workforce ready, from what I have seen.
in some cases.
So.
That makes, that part makes
so
sense
it's
to
not
me.
like
What
LaGuardia
doesn't make sense to me
doesn't
is like the specialized academic and other school. And who gets to benefit from that weight and who doesn't.
Of the specialized needs. No, just portfolios. Yeah, I don't have a list of the portfolios. Yeah, we can definitely get it. Yes, I can send that to you
We'll
tomorrow.
provide that.
All right,
I can get the list and send it to you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, your turn.
Let me get my notes. Okay, so I guess one of the questions I have, and I had this last year during the budget report, and I think we all get so busy, was regarding charter schools. And again, so are those budgets posted on the DOE site? I don't believe they are, right?
No, charter schools.
So what I want to know is where the transparency is in terms of where my tax dollars are going.
So the budgets are not posted on the DOE website. And then also there's really no transparency because just like we have the budget at a glance for public schools, that information is not available for charter schools.
So why is that?
That I don't know. I would have to find out. I don't
So I
know.
asked this last
at all.
year.
Okay. Was it
I'll have
part
to
of that
remember.
question?
This is always my question.
Right.
Where are the numbers? I see lots of Success Academy commercials on TV.
I do too, but
Um,
remember that, okay, but
Mhm.
go ahead, you go ahead.
And I know that my tax dollars are going towards these charter schools. I'm not, I'm not opposed to having schools out there that are serving children, but I want to know that those schools are accountable to the communities. I want to know that every dollar they're getting, they have to be as accountable for them as are the rest of the schools. I just don't, and it's like going into a black hole. That's a lot of money that's going into their budget. So just, is it the state? Like who has the budget and makes sure that they're accountable for that money?
Yeah,
And it's
we
not
have,
all Success Academy commercials on TV.
yeah, Success Academy. Well, anyway,
Any
okay, any charter school. We have a department specifically within the DOE that works with charter schools, and that's all that they do.
Which departments?
I don't know the name of the department, but I can certainly get in touch with someone there and ask them to provide information. And you may even be able to invite someone
Okay.
to one of your CEC meetings so that they can speak to you.
And how do we make them responsible to making sure that those budgets are posted?
I can ask. I can tell.
Let
I
me
can.
ask, how do you mandate that that happens?
You and the PAP,
Yeah.
I think you and the PAP can engage in that conversation.
I don't see
Yeah.
why they don't have to do that when you guys are doing it, like,
Mhm.
here it is, right, transparency, like, what is going on?
Well,
Yeah, it's a district charter partnership team.
oh, we'll be that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there contact information for them? Or is there, like, how,
Sure, I think
how do
let's-
we enact?
We'll start the conversation and then we can connect.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I'm almost done with my term here, I'd like to see this at some point. before I leave.
The answer is the charter law doesn't mandate any transparency on their budgets.
Okay. And that's state law?
It's
This is state law, so this is
State
our
law.
government.
The governor, yeah, your legislators, they,
April
yeah.
20.
Are charter schools,
So we'll talk.
do they have to follow the same rules as as the public schools do? Like, public schools are given a certain amount of money and they say, we're gonna have we're gonna have however many kids in kindergarten. And if they don't fill that, they have to give some of that budget back. Is that correct? Do like charter schools are they ruled by the same?
I don't know. I don't work on charter school budgets at all, so I don't want to tell you yes and I don't know. I can try to get that information.
Kinda,
No.
I saw a twinkle in your eye.
It's.
I think rules are so different and we
Yeah.
don't interact, so we don't wanna,
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
to what goes on.
So, yeah, it might be good to have someone.
We'll definitely reach out and make
Our
that
taxpayers
connection, yeah.
and-
No, absolutely. We can invite someone from the department to come and speak to you guys.
Definitely. Beautiful, thank you for your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, we're giving you a benefit there, no.
It was like a way.
You like to.
Did we have one and then we lost one?
We
never
had
one. It's not coming through.
An article that breaks down.
Do you want any paper to hold?
The USDA and IDA funding, out of one, so, I can share it with you.
Yeah, I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
Just looking at the, it feels like a.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, I'm a professor of education, so I spent a lot of.
I want to sit here so I can see my.
Moving by your good faith.
Yeah. I keep, so keeping looking to other sources and keep the same answer, so. We should.
Thank
And a lot of the money that's being spent currently on federal DOE and civil rights protection.
Yeah.
Okay, we have our Brooklyn North High School, representative.
February is Black History Month, so I appreciate Antonia. I always look forward to your book choices, and Brian's is a treasure, so I hope folks listen to the recommendation.
I'm sorry.
So
You can also listen to it on your,
So we can go to slide 4.
I don't know what just happened.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, I gotta get a second. It seems it took too long. I don't know why it's not opening.
Oh, you just had it. It's weird.
I keep on getting error message. I don't know. That's the only way I can fix it.
And.
It was up this whole time. So,
I'm wondering if you can email it to me and I can share my
let me
screen.
see.
I sent it to the CEC 15 address.
Mhm.
I don't know who has access.
Yeah. You send it to my personal and CC. I just forwarded it to you, Antonia.
Going on there. Oh, sorry.
And I can't open it.
Here we go. I'm gonna share my screen.
She has a signal.
Oh. Oh, right. It won't be,
No, unless you hook your laptop up.
I can't hook my laptop up to, well, I guess, should I just, okay.
Yeah, it's a USB-C.
Okay, so I'll come over there. I'll.
Do I have? Mm-hmm. There we go.
Now it's, oh,
It's okay now.
allow.
Mm. Is it like custom? Okay, let me show.
Oh, wait.
Right here. Start map. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay.
Alright, so.
I'll just.
Right. I feel like Alice in Wonderland, I miss being there. We go to slide 4.
Good.
It's supposed to be done by 8:30.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Leaving now, he wasn't leaving. That's what the permit says, to 8:30.
What's it says on 9:30?
8:30. You want to check it yourself?
No, let me check it.
Sure. Yeah, because he's putting an alarm on at 8:30, so we all gotta.
Okay. I apologize, everybody. We are being kicked out of the space. There seems to have been an error.
All good.
Two meetings in a row.
We don't have quorum anyway. We will post UX presentation on the website as soon as we can. I apologize. I'm being forced to adjourn the meeting. Good night, everybody.
So interpreters are dismissed.
Our permit was
Permit was only
until
till
8:30.
Thank you.
Which does, it's always till
I
9:30,
guess so.
that just seems so
There must
odd.
have been a miscommunication.
I don't know
What about the vote?
Yeah.
No, we don't have quorum.
Yeah. What's your email if you want me to send you the article I found?
Yeah, please.
Who was this?
Robert.
The principal must have put in the wrong time. Put in the permit.
Email?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Thanks for having.
Thank you very much.
What school are you? Yeah.
261.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
I
well,
feel
thank you
bad.
guys
I
very much
need to
for
get to
going.
apologize to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
see you again.
Excuse me, interpreters we are dismissed now?
Yes.
Okay. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Happy. We spoke on
Um,
while you're making potatoes. I cooked it.